Thank you so much for being here and for another episode of RM Smart Investing. With a theme that we started last week with Qatar World Cup upon us in less than 3 weeks, actually in 18 days, we're going to follow on the theme of soccer. And I think it's exciting and kind of putting the financial side of things mixed with the soccer. And hopefully it will be entertaining as well as informative. And I think I will continue this the following weeks, just again with the theme of the World Cup soccer, which is really interesting to talk about it in November. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about the numbers, the financial side of the soccer. And I will start with this question. Why would any country want to host the World Cup? Because really it is a losing financial proposition. And we've done a lot of studies on how it affects the host countries. And upon running to the World Cup, their markets do well economically. They develop because of all the infrastructure spending and everything. But after that, if you go back to Olympics, for instance, for the Greece, go to Brazil Olympics, and also the World Cup, unfortunately, the amount of money invested, it does not pay off. So let's revisit this. Here's Qatar, who's spending $200 billion. They've built 6 new stadiums. They're all air conditioned, so the players do not feel the desert heat. And they are in the middle of desert. It's going to be hot. So they've done the most advanced technology, but also they've used 30,000 migrant workers in order to do this. So the question is, why? Why would anyone do this? So there's 3 main reasons. Number one, countries do this because they want to put their country on the map. For Qatar, very small Persian Gulf country, this is a goodwill kind of a thing. They want to be known. And the second thing is to boost their economic growth by increasing the foreign direct investments. Again, because of that exposure, showing that there's stability, economic growth, they're hoping that it will be more capital investments. The third things countries do is they promote tourism. So in the case of Qatar, majority of their, obviously, GDP comes from their energy. And, the producers of, obviously large natural gas and oil. So they want to diversify. So the tourism plays a big role. Now, the question is, have they succeeded? Now, number one, putting the country on the map. Unfortunately, the way it started really was not a very good will. There's a lot of people still questioning why Qatar got the World Cup. And of course, the bribery, we go back to what happened in FIFA, all that. So I don't believe they have succeeded, but it is what it is. To boost economic growth by increasing the foreign direct investments, they still have problems again with as far as the impression they give, and it mixed by the tourism is basically the way they treat the labor, the immigrants, the way they treat the female. So there's, and obviously there's the LGBTQ, there's the questions about that. So I don't believe they have also succeeded in that. So the bottom line is they might have to really go back and rely on their energy resources. So, but in meantime, they want the glory. It is something that they had the funds. I mean, $200 billion is a lot of money, but that's what they have done. So when we compare to the previous World Cups, for instance, starting from 1994 USA and on for the last 8 ones, you see by far, this is the most expensive World Cup. And, you go back to Russia, go back to Brazil. Now, on top of that, I mentioned about the visitors, the timing of it. Obviously, there's some social issues. There have been even some talks about boycotting. So you see the perception that they have given out is not very positive. And obviously, the revenues will not really be there as much as the other when you think about USA, which was very successful. I mean, the stadiums were filled, and it was, such a large country, but there was lots of success from that World Cup. So I'm gonna move on from the World Cup, and we move to something called the Super League, which came out a couple of years ago, and there was a big hoopla, if you recall, is super clubs in Europe. They want to actually, rather than having the UEFA, they wanted to have their own league, and you would question why. So let's think about the financial side of things. And where are the revenues coming, and why would they even think about that? So for the top European clubs, it is profitable to play amongst elite clubs. So it's like a kind of elite club in a way of their fundings, their fame, their acceptance. So they would rather going to play with very low budget in small stadium. This was very successful as far as the financial side, they thought. The other thing was whether they want to have the local supporters versus this international exposure, especially from the TV production. Imagine, constantly you have these big clubs, they are playing against each other, and there is a large fan globally. So this is a global event. It was not a domestic event. And that's why this whole idea started. And obviously, we know what happened, although there's still, when you think about Real Madrid and the Juventus of the world, they're still very persistent on that. So the opposite side is a history. These clubs have history, and they have the folklore. There is this loyalty, and people really live and die with their own club. So that was the uprising, and that was more of a nationalism in a local way. So that's why it kind of got defeated. But I want to just put it from the financial side of things. Why would they think? So when we look at as far as the revenues, when it comes to all the companies, the clubs, you see that really the match day is the smallest portion of all these clubs, major clubs. It is the broadcasting, and then of course is the commercial side of things. Is there, there's jerseys, there, all the things that they sell. So when you look at Real Madrid, you see they're very much, it's an international brand. So that's why you see again with this huge TV rights, how much money they are making. And that's what there's a differentiation between them and like smaller clubs. It's the name recognition. So we see these top four revenue generators are Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Manchester City. Now, Manchester United has gone down a little bit, again, with the challenges that they've had, but they used to be the most recognized. Them and Real Madrid were the most recognized brands in the globe. So this might explain why these teams, they want to actually have their own league because of this, and also TV rights. So they really didn't care as much whether people show up or not. So that's, again, the financial side of why the clubs wanted to have that. And again, where the revenues come, which again, mostly comes from the commercial side of things. That's far as we look at these large clubs and we look at as far as their health, you can see when it was asked, how financial directors would describe their clubs' finances. We have these small clubs versus the large clubs. So we see in Premier League, about 45%, they thought they were very healthy. Around maybe another 40% or 50%, they thought it could be better. The only 5% attention was needed. But when you come to League Two, for instance, they are constantly have a hardship. And that's especially again in Premier League and a lot of European League, this is very visible. So smaller clubs are in a constant challenges. So I'm gonna have different themes. So I'm gonna fly over and go to China. with the soccer in China, as you know, especially past 5 years or so, it has been uh, it has been a financial center for the clubs. They, as far as bringing in, you know, players from Europe, from Latin America, from South America, and what has happened, they have been paying this huge amount. So I put down high wages doesn't equal high quality. And the reason is when you look at the weekly salary of some of the players, the top five, you see that the three of them are in the Chinese league. So we have the Oscar from Brazil, in Shanghai, is making over $400,000 a week. Kevin De Bruyne is the top. This is as of 2020, by the way. So it's been updated, but just the concept of, we have three of the top six are in China, but high wages, that doesn't mean high quality. When you think about Hulk and, Kambu. So you see that obviously top earners come from Premier League, Spanish La Liga, Italian Serie A, and then Bundesliga, and from Ligue 1. China is right there, ahead of Russia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Belgium, Mexican leagues, Argentinian leagues, Portuguese. And so that means that even though they're spending a lot of money, that doesn't mean it's a good quality for competition. So you can see the MLS is not too far from the Portuguese. Now, the other thing I want to bring to your attention is with all the problems we've had in China, especially on the technology side and the real estate moguls, they've been going after mega wealthy. Now, these are the owners of this. There's a lot of them are in a real estate business, and they're owners of the CSL club. So I want you to have a list of, see how many of the owners of these clubs are in a real estate related business. So again, that could put a ratchet as far as the soccer clubs go when there's a pressure on the owners. So we're gonna come completely opposite, come to the soccer in USA, which, it's had the ups and downs. They've had this magical moment in 1950s, for instance, when they beat England 1-0. There was a thought that, USA, that would be beginning of the soccer. In 1960s, they started a little bit of, professional leagues. Then we had, obviously, but with the arrival of Pelé in 1970s, with Cosmos being a mega club, mega team, which, NASL folded, I think it was 83 or 84. They had all these fantastic players from all over, from Beckenbauers of the world to Georgie Best, and they were playing in ASL, but it folded. So we've had this story for a long time, whether soccer will succeed in the United States. The question is it this time, is it going to be different? Will MLS, the Major League Soccer, get somewhere? And again, this story has been bringing some of the players from big names from Europe as they're retiring, from David Beckham's of the world to Ibrahimovic, and as far as many other names that they've been here, but it hasn't really gone up. So is there any hope? So let's review it from few different point of view. So I'm gonna start with Ted Lasso. That came from nothing, and here is a series on Apple TV getting attention. A lot of Americans who have really never really got into soccer, they're approaching it in a different way, coming from the being a football coach, American football coach, going to London and basic seeing things from a different point of view. It has kind of resonated with the American viewer. So on top of that, then we have Ryan Reynolds, from the Canadian actor and the two partnerships, they come and they buy Wrexham Club in Wales, and they started as a movie series, and here they are in Fox, I believe, and welcome to Wrexham. So there is that exposure. But also I want to look at the generations, and this the new generation is that bringing more parents to be involved with soccer. So it's the youth sports, and the growing popularity of soccer is compared to other sports. And so we're going to look at from demographics as well. So when we look at, this is the latest ones from 2017, when we look at the American football and basketball and baseball compared to soccer, you see there's a lot of volatility, but the soccer popularity is in an up, while the other sports actually they're downtrending. And then when we look at the average per game, as far as attendance go, this is as of 2018, obviously American football with the major, huge stadiums, they are way up there. But when you go to the baseball, soccer is the third sports. They're averaging about 20,000 ahead of NBA and NHL. Of course, they're indoor, but still, there's more people going to MLS. Now, we're gonna look at the share of the parents who actually participated in the sports growing up, and we want to look at the different generations. Now, when we look at the parents who have children who were born before 1997, so the kids are in the 25 and older now, they really did not, as far as the soccer goes, they've been participating the lowest number compared to when you think about baseball, American football, and basketball. You can see that there are higher numbers as for the older generations. Then we come to our Gen Z, which are the kids born from 1997 to 2013. And you see there is a movement actually equal to the baseball and just behind basketball and American football. And then when we come to Generation Alpha, these are the kids born 2013. Again, it's moving upwards. So you see the growth in the parents who have the young children, they're moving more forward to soccer, and it's very compatible, while it wasn't, for older generation, older parents in a, middle ages, and the younger parents. Also, when we think about share of parents whose kids are fans or are viewers of these sports. So we look at the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, you see that actually the younger children, the younger generation's parents are even ahead of the Gen Z. So you see, unlike other sports, the younger parents are very much into the soccer, and that's another reason for the popularity of soccer. And last but not least is the Hispanic population. And you can see the growth of population as a share of United States. It is going to continue. And when we look at that, that's a market. Obviously, the biggest debate has been from the commercial side of soccer. Soccer is a continuous sport. It's not like baseball having 9 innings. It doesn't have like the American football every 1 or 2 minutes. There's a stoppage. There's always these commercials break, so it makes much sense to have those sports televised. With soccer, is very difficult. You have 2 halves. You have only 45 minutes of continuous play, and then you have the halftime. So that's been the biggest hinder as far as the commercialism part of the thing. So that's the reason that it hasn't been so far successful commercially. But from grassroots, soccer actually, when you think of it, the largest youth sports, a lot of parents want their children to play. The question is, what happens after high school? What happens after college? Is this just just to play the sports as a sake of sports, or is there a professional future for that? Another sign you have to see, that just want to share this, American ownership of clubs in Europe. When you look at the Premier Leagues, you see there's a 7 out of 20 teams in the Premier League are owned by Americans. Even in the Italian Serie A, there's 5 of the teams. You go to Spanish La Liga, Mallorca is owned. And then when we go to French Ligue 1, and there's 3 teams when we look at the English even championship league, there are 5, and again Series B, and then League 2 in French. So you see there's quite few investors. So why is it important? Because they are going to bring those sports, they're going to bring to the United States as far as maybe from the youth point of view, from the club side of things, and then continue with that. So this also a factor for the growth. So now, when we look at one of the ways of valuing a club, we look at what is its average value to revenue multiply. And the multiplier, like NFL, is 6.2, the value to revenue, NBA 7.8, MLB, Major League Baseball, is 6.4, and Premier League is 4. So it's pretty reasonable in that sense. But MLS is 12.2. So that's richly valued, these clubs. So basically, is it worth it? Is it warranted that they are richly valued? So, and the main reason can be given, having such a large country, it over close to 330 million population, is other sports. When we go from regions, US West, and then we look at Northeast, we look at South, look at Midwest, you see the shares of other sports, especially you can see the American football. It's a huge business. This is in billions. You see just the US West is $55 billion industry. And in Europe is only, when you look at the Europe soccer, is like 35 billion. So there is a lot of room. You look at South, it's all football. There is no other sports. When you look at, in Northeast, you have basketball and baseball. So that's perhaps one of the reasons, if it's going to succeed, is because of there's a large market in billions for the growth of soccer. Now, one of the problems obviously we had COVID in 2020, and the aftermath of that, finally things are opening. So we can see the stadium attendance in millions, and basically, obviously, there was nobody going to stadium. So we had a big drop, which affected a majority of sports teams. It affected a lot of large teams. And you go back to Barcelona, of course, there's been some mismanagement and other things. So the teams that they were fragile, they really got hit hard. So for instance, here, stadiums were empty. So obviously I put on empty stadiums and no revenue. So that really affected the clubs. The other thing is the transfers. I mean, we look back and we go back to 2012. And then when we look at, it was a $1 to $2 billion as far as the spending goes. And look what we've gone to. It's been, of course, because of the COVID, we dropped, but we are going back up again. Some people, we can look back to Real Madrid, we can look back to Barcelona, but then the 2 teams come into mind, obviously Manchester City and PSG, spending billions, and that has really, I call it hyperinflation, has really moved the transfer fees up, and you can see someone like Neymar can actually ask for 600 million, or we don't know what will happen with Mbappe. So that's one of the things that it's really affected. And based on that, I want to come here, they're high payrolls. And that high payrolls when you look at the clubs in Europe, this is as of just 2020, it is the payroll to revenue ratio in these European clubs is 75%. That means most of their whatever they make, it goes to the payrolls. Now, you compare that, we look at different industries around the world, and you look at mining, construction, you look at restaurants and hotels and trucking. Now, this is pre-pandemic, and this is after. You see that they've been just paying their players. When you compare that, the European football, you see with all those revenues, that's the reason they have challenges as far as being a successful business, because of the high volatility. Now, in the United States, you have this system of more stability. And what I mean by that is we don't have different levels. You don't get relegated. So, even if you did the worst thing, you're still going to be presented and come back a year from now and work on it. So, unfortunately, or fortunate of it, it's a system. In Europe, there's always that fear of relegation. And because of that, loss of millions and millions, because it's the exposure. When you're in Premier, for instance, or the championship, there is a huge difference. You're going to all these stadiums, the revenue, the biggest one is the TV revenue sharing. And on top of that, when you are playing in Champion League, for instance, or you're playing in the European at a high level, you get paid as you go to the next level, and you're losing those revenues. So that's why in the United States, because of that stability, most of the sports, they all have their salaries less than 50% of their revenues. And when we look at, consequently, we look at the operating profits, and again, it comes to our picture as far as what happened to Barcelona, for instance. Now, this is as of 2020. Now, things are moving, but I want to show you the volatility that what has happened with Premier League. You see, they're not the operating profit is not that much. So they've been pretty steady. For instance, in La Liga, Serie A has been losing money. On the Bundesliga is up there, but French, Ligue 1 and Serie A, they're in the negatives. So, and Premier was going down. So that's changing a little bit. The other thing I want to, because of, again, we talk about digital currencies, it's very interesting how a lot of football clubs, especially in Premier League, so they are getting the exposure. They're talking about the NFTs and metaverse, but being dependent on that, if you follow like Bitcoin prices, you see the real volatility of the valuation of these tokens. So we have NFTs for Manchester City, Arsenal, Leeds United, Everton, and Aston Villa. You look at that, I mean, these are the big movements from this start in January, and this is where we are now. So, but I don't remember if you watched Ballon d'Or this past month, and all the winners, they got their NFT, the Ballon d'Or as an NFT. So Europe is really moving towards that to appreciate them. And actually football, and it started with, Pele came up with his NFT. So football is going to that route more than other sports. And the only one I can think of is like maybe NASCAR. But just from the financial point of view and mixing it with more of a up and coming what's happening on the digital currency side of things. So let me finish this our presentation by looking at the Forbes list of the highest paid footballers in 2022. Mbappe scored a beautiful goal against Juventus this afternoon, so I hope you watched that. Anyway, he is the highest paid, and this is mainly coming from the revenues as a salary, but also the commercials and other things. So 128 million. Lionel Messi still up there, 120 million. Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, 100 million. Neymar, 87. Mohamed Salah is 53. Erling Haaland, 39 million. Robert Lewandowski, 35 million. Eden Hazard is still getting paid, not playing a lot, 31 million. Iniesta, I believe he plays in J League, in Japanese league. He made 30 million, and Kevin De Bruyne 29 million. So the last but not least, I want to share what are the top 10 richest soccer players in the world as of now. So the richest player in the world is Cristiano Ronaldo with $690 million. Lionel Messi has 600 million. David Beckham was really creating an empire in a sense, owning different things, and obviously with the Inter Miami FC, that's 450 million. The rest are very close to each other. Neymar, 200 million. Ibrahimovic still going strong, 190 million. Mbappe just beginning, and he's probably going to go up there if he's managed right. 176 million. Wayne Rooney, 160 million. Ronaldo, good old Ronaldo from Brazil, 160 million. Gareth Bale is 150 million, and Alexander Pato, who was a forward from Brazil who plays in Orlando FC, has 145 million. So basically, just want to put some numbers together, a little maybe fun, but also seeing that what is happening as far as the world of money and the world of numbers, with mixing it with football or soccer, and where soccer stands. So again, with the World Cup starting very shortly, I thought it would be a good idea, timely, just talk about business of soccer. I'd like to continue with this, and we will go to the other avenues related to soccer. So with that in mind, I want to make it short and sweet, and I will stop the recording and open up for questions.